Hi, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all and to those also joining online tonight. This is a very special presentation which local community members will reflect on their experiences during the COVID-19 pandemic. 5 years ago, this spring, people were scared, confused, and just trying to navigate the new reality that seemed to come out of nowhere. Tonight, we'll focus on our community's experiences during this time in our recent history. You'll hear from a diverse group of community members across multiple professions and circumstances. And it's our hope that not only will this event serve to recognize and remember a significant historical moment, but will also offer a deeper understanding and appreciation of the collective efforts that helped our community endure and move forward. I'm very thankful to our panelists for taking the time to be here with us tonight. I also want to acknowledge that some of the topics discussed tonight might bring back some difficult memories for our panelists and for you all. As our panelists share, please just remember that their personal experiences, and we are all here to learn more about one another through both our differences and our similarities. So what we'll do is ask each panelist to introduce themselves and then just speak for about 5 minutes if you have enough to say for 5 minutes. And then we'll just move on to the next person, and then we'll do a question and answer at the end. Okay, do we want to start with Tina?
Of what matters most to our clients, feeling seen, heard, and cared for. But the digital divide left many isolated. And while we got creative, there is no real substitute for in-person connection. Some of the magic of our senior centers, the spontaneous laughter, the social energy, was lost for a time. At our center, we took action immediately. We delivered meals and essentials, masks, Lysol wipes, toilet paper, and paper towels. For those who relied on daily lunch, we worked with Hartford Hospital to ensure free meals were delivered to their homes. We also focused on staying emotionally connected. Our birthday card brigade began early and still continues today. We started weekly Friday robocalls to share updates and simply say, "You're not alone." When staff returned to the building, but the public couldn't yet come in, we got creative. We ran drive-up events like Walking Taco Day, Root Beer Float Day, Muffins for Mother's Day, Donuts for Dad Day. We held bingo in the parking lot and art classes on the front lawn, anything to keep people engaged. Transportation was paused, which created real hardship, but resident volunteers stepped up to shop for those in need. Once we resumed bus service, we added air filtration systems and plexiglass shields to protect riders and drivers. When we reopened, things didn't bounce back overnight. Trip participation remains low, partly because tour companies closed or scaled back, and partly due to lingering caution. It also exposed what we can, musical programs also haven't regained their pre-pandemic audiences, not because the interest is gone, but because group settings still feel risky to many. As for how I explain the changes, it's simple. The pandemic tested every system we had. The things that worked under pressure stuck. The things that didn't, like depending entirely on in-person access, had to evolve. And overall, I see these changes as mostly positive. They made us more inclusive, more flexible, and more proactive. But we need to be careful not to let technology replace human touch, and not to let crisis mode urgency fade into complacency. If anything, the pandemic reminded us that adaptability isn't a one-time response, it's a mindset. And I've come to believe that the work we do is essential, on a public health level, not just a social one. As we reflect, I hope we hold on to that urgency, not panic-driven, not purpose-driven, to keep adapting, improving, and advocating for the people who count on us. Thank you.
Thanks, that's hard to beat. Oh, okay. Anyway, as you said, my name is Laura. I work at Stop and Shop. Let me put this a little closer. I've been at Stop and Shop for about 10 and a half years now. I lived through one strike, and then we had another major thing happen, the pandemic. I remember if it pretty much like was yesterday sometimes, because people still talk about it. I was one of the very few people that did not take any time off during the pandemic. It was kind of rough, but some of the questions I kind of followed, as we all know, food is an essential major thing in our lives. I mean, we need food to survive, and being the only grocery store in town, we came up with some major challenges overnight. If anybody that's been in the store during like Easter time or Christmas or Thanksgiving, you know how crazy it is. Picture that 3 times worse. I've had people come through with, instead of having $300 loads of groceries, $700, wiping things off the shelf because the nation was about to get locked down. And that's kind of scary in a way, thinking, am I going to get my next meal? Or when is the next time I'm going to be able to get to the store? And I remember some of the things people were saying, well, when are you going to get this in? Well, when you have the nation locked down and you work for a grocery store and everything else is locked down, it's hard to say and hard to judge when we are going to get the next deliveries in. So that's some of the things that working during the pandemic we had to face. Some of the other challenges were we did have to follow the CDC guidelines. Some people went with them, some people didn't. It was like one of those mandatory things. You had to wear a mask coming into the store. Walking down, I don't know if everybody remembers the one-way aisle thing. We had a lot of people get really angry about that and couldn't understand why we had one-way aisles. And then the 6-foot rule. I mean, I personally like having a personal bubble. I don't like somebody breathing right down my neck. And that was kind of tough to tell people, no, you need to wait here. Some people didn't care. They just wanted to get in and out as soon as they could. Let's see, what else did I have here? And then even though we have the 2 entrances, some people could not understand why we only have one entrance open. If you go to some stores still only have the one entrance and one exit on one side. Some grocery stores, other places have both of them. During the pandemic, we only had one side of the store open, and we got a lot of well, what if there was a fire? And then we would open, something in a case like that, we would open the other side, and there is fire doors all throughout the store. So if a case like that, we would have made access to something like that, but thank goodness something like that never happened. We also had a lot of our employees decided not to come in. They're like, well, it's a pandemic, I don't have to come in. And according to the rules, we couldn't force them to come in. So we had the same, maybe about 7 or 8 employees, as we just heard, work, and we were all getting stressed out, all getting burnt out, because we were all working 10-hour days, 12-hour days, and the stress with that and the customers, and some people not understanding that this is it is a mandatory thing. Food is mandatory, and not, like I said, people were wiping things off the shelf like hoarding. Why would one person want to have 6 rolls, thick things of toilet paper, and why can't this person have it? So, and then like I said, some of the things I've seen a couple of fights break out. Literally, I mean, it was kind of scary. People were shouting and screaming, and a few times there was a couple of fists thrown. And so, I mean, and it's tough. I mean, it was definitely a tough situation. Some of the things that we're talking about the normal. It's what's actually the real normal nowadays. We just recently, in the last year and a half, finally took down all the plexiglass. This past year, as you all noticed, we have a lot of new self-scan registers. Our first 3 registers that were never used are now being used. That plexiglass finally came down this past year. And yeah, I'm a little nervous, so you have to excuse me. But then we always have the wipes in the front ends. I see a lot more people using the wipes on the carriages. A lot of people still, I think because of the pandemic, people realize how bad And I mean, we're a grocery store. People come in all the time. There's our job. I mean, it's full of germs. I mean, we're a clean store, but the grocery store has a lot of germs. And people are still wearing masks. People are still wearing gloves, which is a good thing in one way because, I mean, it kind of helps break down the spread of germs. Let's see, what else do I have? And then some of the positive changes. I think some people are more aware of what's going on, like how fast like germs can spread. I know I personally, I mean, I could catch a cold if somebody's in the next room sometimes. Sometimes I don't. It all depends. So I mean, some people are more apt to be more careful. You'll see some people, like I said, doing the 6-foot rule. Like I said, a lot of people are still wearing masks, which are a good thing. The hand sanitizer, but that's our new norm for a grocery store and like most stores you walk into. So, I mean, hopefully this will never happen again, but we can't predict the future, but we know what's going to happen if, like, we have some idea how to be prepared for something like that next time it happens. Thank you.
I'm a physical education and health teacher. I've been teaching for 26 years in Berlin. 25 have been at the high school. First, like to say thank you because I think that I've actually taken for granted some of the times I went to the grocery store, and I can remember how frustrated I was when I got to the end of an aisle and I forgot something at the other side of the aisle and I couldn't turn around. So I was like, oh, so I feel for everybody. But thank you. So there's some unique challenges in the school system. And the way, I'm just going to read the way I wrote it down, and I've forgot how much I've actually blocked out from everything. And I was sitting down in the lunchroom and we were talking about it and hashing through things, and it's like, whew, there's a lot of stuff going on. So, well, we were sent home for 2 weeks to slow the spread, right? That quickly turned into the rest of the year. I set up my Zoom calls for every period. I carried out my classes to the best of my abilities. My students were active on their own with an app on their phone. So when they were home, they would be using their phones, right? And we couldn't tell if they were actually doing anything, so they had to actually use the GPS on their phone, track what they did, and then actually upload it into our Schoology system so that we could actually give them credit for every day. Because if we didn't have that, we'd be like, did you go for your walk today? Sure did, you know. So, but that was, technology helped in that respect, you know. It gets a bad rep for a lot of things. So they were required to complete a mile for every class missed and document it on their phone. Special needs unified. We were doing yoga. We filled up water bottles and used them for bowling classes. We were trying to do anything we possibly could that we could when we would enter into their rooms or their houses. Each student would meet for yoga or bowling, depending on the day. I would keep score and cheer them on. They would bowl, reset their pins, and then we would keep going for the time. The following school year was hybrid learning. So after we made it through all of that, hybrid meant that you would see half of your students in class, so half the students would be there, and then half the students were home. And you'd have a computer screen and set up in front of you with your Zoom tower, and then you would also have the students sitting in front of you like this. So you have a computer monitor, and you'd also have, so invariably you would forget about one of them, like you're teaching one, and then you feel bad that you're not teaching to the other one. So it was almost like an impossible situation. But the students did a really good job of being, you know, present. So typically when the students were at home and they were on this, I don't know why this happened. Maybe someone could actually fill me in. But pretty much this is all you would see. Online, so you have no idea what they were really doing. You know, you hope that they were paying attention, but you didn't get to see their exactly what was going on. So you missed out on that piece. I thought it was a very interesting time trying to engage both the math students and get the attention of those at home. And people were very thoughtful and just worked really hard at trying to reach every single student every day, which obviously is pretty much impossible, but you tried, right? So what issues did I not expect? So students in class could be anywhere on a Zoom. There were people driving in their car, and you would see the roof of the car and things passing by. Some kids didn't have a space that was, because if they shared a room with a brother or sister, they would have to be in another room, and then you would see people like walking back and forth, sandwiches being made, whatever. So there's all kinds of things happening while you're in class. What else? Students were usually pretty good about muting their Zoom calls, but unfortunately, sometimes they didn't. You would hear arguments in the background. When I don't know if you remember this, but when I would meet with the students, each person would have to do an exercise. This is when we were home all the time. And one of the exercises, my dog, for some reason, just flipped out. And he would like leap at me and start barking at me. So anytime I did jumping jacks, my dog would attack me. So I don't know. So that's something I didn't expect. So I'm trying to keep it as light as I can because I know how heavy it was, and I'm going to get into like positives and negatives, and I don't want to make light of what happened because I know there's people that still haven't really truly recovered from that time. But what are some positive things? So technology-wise, we were able to carry out our online district curriculum because it already existed. The district had us create, we use a system that's called Schoology. Within Schoology, you're going to be able to put all of your assignments in. And then students were able to reach that at home. We had already had that in place at school, and everything is listed in order. So when you post something and the due date, it comes right up on their panel, and they get to look at it, and they know what's going on. So they know what they should be doing, when that should be done, when it should be done by. And most students did a pretty good job. Anyone that was motivated was pretty well kept on target as far as the rest of that year. It's the students that weren't always that motivated that you really had to work hard to reach, and that wasn't always easy. We were forced to look at many different types of technology. We give it a broad survey and then put the best ones to use. For me, I let the students decide, so they were able to choose whichever app they wanted to figure out which one worked for them. What GPS works for you, go for it. It doesn't matter to us, so that worked out pretty well. Obviously, teachers and students became more tech savvy. I had to. Students were already pretty tech savvy, but it also prepared them for digital learning and work environments. School district could create their calendar, and they wouldn't have to adjust it. So if they wanted to never have a snow day again, that's an option as well. So that could be a potential bonus. There's flexibility in learning. Online and hybrid learning allow for more flexible schedules. Motivated students could still learn despite the circumstances. And some students thrived with self-paced learning, especially those with anxiety who struggle with traditional classroom settings. Sometimes it's difficult for students to just walk through the hallways. There's definitely an increased awareness on mental health. Schools began implementing more mental health resources in response to student stress and isolation. Conversations around emotional well-being became more normalized. We have what's called the mood meter, was established to recognize our feelings and emotions and attempt to identify them. And once you can identify them, then you can actually figure out what's going on in your life so that you can move forward and actually be present when you're in class. Innovation in teaching methods. Teachers experimented with video content, digital quizzes, online collaboration tools. It pushed educators to adapt and get creative with how they delivered their lessons. Obviously, I never thought I would be using water bottles for bowling pins. But parent engagement grew in some cases with learning happening at home. Many parents became more involved, and I think that there is a little bit more appreciation for teachers and what they do when that happened, which is a definite positive. I do have some negative things. There is definitely a widened educational inequality. Those with learning disabilities or special needs, they face more barriers, and when they're in school, they have so much support. Oftentimes, they could potentially have a one-on-one. They could have their school teacher. They could have a special ed teacher. They could have occupational therapy. All those people could be right at their fingertips, and when you are at home by yourself, you don't have all that, and some people missed out. sometimes it feels like teachers were perceived as like, oh, you didn't have to do anything over COVID. That was definitely not the case. There was a lot of work going on, and it was frustrating because you couldn't always reach every student. Social emotional challenges. We've learned that human interaction is critically necessary to meet the needs of all students. That is by far very important. Students missed out on the face-to-face interaction. They missed out on clubs. They missed out on sports. They missed out on graduation. Many experienced loneliness, anxiety, and depression due to the isolation. Decline in academic performance and engagement. Many students had difficulty staying motivated and focused at home. I was talking to students today. They were in 7th grade. I had a senior group this morning. They were in 7th grade, and I asked them about it, and they were just explaining to me how they're very motivated, and they've gotten to the schools that they want to get into. They have majors that they want to, excel in, and they have a plan, and that's all great. And they said that I just lost something. One girl was explaining to me how at one time, on a weekend, she would just learn how to sign language or just go and do something like that. And after COVID, she's like, I just lost that piece of me. And I said, did you ever find it? She's like, not really. And it's kind of like, is it possible to actually lose something? So I'm not sure. But that's what was reported to me from the students. Okay, sorry about that. That's as far as I only had a few more things. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Vincenzo D'Astoli. I was a senior in high school when COVID hit, and now I'm currently back at the high school working. Being a senior at Berlin High School during 2020 when COVID first hit meant experiencing a very sudden and disorienting disruption. One day we were planning prom, graduation, and in the middle of practicing for Mr. BHS, and next we were being told to pack up and go home for a period of 2 weeks thinking we would return. The challenges we faced were both academic and emotional. We lost in-person classes, but more importantly, we lost the social milestones that marked the end of high school. There was no closure, no proper goodbyes, no final events, and for a lot of us, that left a lingering sense of incompleteness. We didn't expect how isolating online school would feel. We thought it'd be easier, less stress, fewer tests, but what happened instead was a loss of motivation, a lack of structure, and for many, a decline in mental health. One of the unexpected issues was how hard it became to stay connected, not just with friends, but with teachers. The support system we were used to disappeared overnight. I also didn't anticipate how much harder it would be to feel confident stepping into college or the workforce without the traditional end-of-year guidance we usually get. That said, there were some positives. The pandemic forced all of us to become more flexible, more self-reliant, and in some ways more resilient. We learned how to adapt, how to communicate digitally, and how to balance life in a completely new way. We also saw a huge shift in how education can work, with more emphasis on remote learning, technology, and accessibility. Post-pandemic, some of these changes still have stuck. Hybrid and online learning is more common. Professors and teachers are more understanding about mental health, and there's more emphasis on flexibility in how we learn. Since working at the high school, I have noticed that more and more tasks are now technology-based, including the SAT, which I took on paper 5 years ago. Personally, I think those changes are mixed, some positive, like kids becoming more tech-savvy at a younger age, being able to access recorded lectures or work from home when needed. But some are negative too, like a decrease in face-to-face interaction, which is something you can't replicate through a screen. Overall, I'd say the pandemic left behind a more digital, more adaptable education system, but also one that's still figuring out how to rebuild the sense of community we lost. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kelly Brazel, and I'm here to provide a parent's perspective. Every parent's experience during the COVID-19 pandemic was so unique. I personally know moms who relished the time, baking bread with their children, reading the entire box set of Harry Potter, and just enjoying the stillness. I am simply not a still person. I do remember some of those lovely, calm moments with my then toddler, kindergartner, and second grader, but those first few months, the emotions that permeated me the strongest were absolutely a sense of grief, loss, and fear. As a parent of young children, especially as a mother, you consistently hear a message of how fast it all goes and how you will never get these days back. And there were milestones and moments we were missing that were just gone. Easter celebrations, canceled. Soccer season, softball season, canceled. Our highly anticipated, meticulously planned trip to Disney World over April break, canceled. My middle daughter, Tessa, had watched both her siblings celebrate their birthdays with great fanfare over the previous months, but her late March birthday saw both her friend and family birthday parties canceled. I tried everything I could think of. Happy meals, decorating the house top to bottom, extra presents, but it simply wasn't the same as big parties with her family and friends, as well as being able to celebrate her birthday with her friends at school. You only turn 6 once, and despite all my efforts, she was sad, and it broke my heart. I was lucky in a sense that my youngest Hudson had just turned 2, and with his daycare being closed, he was happy to toddle around our home, enjoying the extra time with his parents, playing with his big sisters, and unavoidably watching some extra cartoons while we were all on Zoom working and going to school. My second grader, Charlotte, adapted okay, engaging in her online schooling and willingly working independently when necessary. But Tessa was in kindergarten, which we had just experienced 2 years prior with my oldest, so I was painfully aware of how magical kindergarten in the spring is. There's extra recess, all these amazing end-of-the-year celebrations, your first field day, and kindergarten graduation. And these extraordinary moments in time, Tessa would just miss. There had been talk about possibly opening the school for the last few weeks in late May, early June, and I was so optimistic about the kids being able to go back into their classrooms and participate in some of these end-of-the-year milestones. At that point in time, I had taken up jogging again, as one does during a pandemic, and I vividly remember running up Hudson Street, possibly one of the toughest streets in all of Berlin to run on, when the notice came in that schools were going to be closed through June. And I was just crushed. And that is my best metaphor for parenting in a pandemic, trying to run up a hill while one obstacle after another is thrown in your way. My heart broke for my 2 elementary schoolers and their classmates, as well as my own students at work who were seniors in high school and would miss their prom and graduation. It is important to note that the Berlin teachers, especially at Hubbard where my personal experience was, were extraordinary. They did teacher parades where all of the staff drove through the neighborhoods of their students, beeping and waving as the kids lined the streets. It was heartwarming and it was beautiful. Also, Tessa's kindergarten teacher and principal personally visited our home and presented her with her kindergarten diploma and gifts. We had our family there, and I will be forever grateful that even though she was unable to celebrate with her classmates at Hubbard, that memory was still made. As we went into summer, the stress of school was gone, but the fear of us getting sick, or even worse, getting my parents or in-laws sick, weighed heavily on my mind. Yet time marches on and we navigated through. There were the big heartbreaks, like the canceling of the Berlin Fair, which is hands down my kids' favorite weekend of the entire year, to smaller disappointments, like when Tessa was quarantined because of a classmate had been exposed to COVID and she missed 2 weeks of school, including Halloween. 2 weeks out of school, especially as working parents, was really hard, but we got through it. The kids started playing sports again, playing soccer outside in masks, which felt uncomfortable and borderline apocalyptic, and we resumed having family get-togethers and playdates at parks and backyards. At school, the kids ate lunch at their desks in little clear plastic cubicles. We finally took our trip to Disney and rode Space Mountain with our masks on. It was bittersweet and scary and sad, but also we were just grateful that things were slowly getting better. When the last of the COVID protocols, the mask mandate, was finally lifted in late February of 2022, 2 long years later, I know I was not alone in crying tears of relief. It is hard to think about these things, even now, without moments of self-doubt and worrying about being overdramatic about the impact COVID had on our children. Yes, children are resilient. Children need to learn about health and safety, and face disappointments. But the truth was, the majority of that time was heartbreaking. Social distancing doesn't have a place in daycare and elementary school, and trying to explain why they couldn't hug a grandparent was close to impossible. Walking the tightrope of trying to keep my family safe while also not doing lasting damage to our kids by keeping everyone locked up inside, scared and isolated, was exhausting. I realized as I was preparing these remarks that I don't like to think about COVID times at all. Our family was so unbelievably blessed that we did not suffer as much as those who became unemployed, lost a loved one, or had to suffer through the disease themselves, but we did miss out on a lot. And because of that, I now make sure to take advantage of any opportunity that comes our way. Every chance to take a trip, see family, join a team, I'm quick to say yes. 5 years later, we are back into our old pre-COVID routines, but that anxiety still hides in the back of my mind. I know how delicate our beautiful life is with our extended family, friends, school, and community, and how quickly it can all just be gone.
Hi, my name is Ann Hartman, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Central Connecticut Health District. So for those of you who don't know, we are the local health department for Berlin, Newington, Rocky Hill, and Weathersfield. If you've ever gotten a flu shot at Tina's place, that was probably us. So as a local health department, we have an emergency preparedness coordinator. So, and that was what I did in a previous job before this job, and that person's job is to prepare for just such calamities. That's why we do it. That's also part of the reason that we run our flu clinics, so that we were prepared in case there was ever a pandemic. So as this pandemic sort of rolled up in the health department, we started to hear noise of things in China the end of 2019. And your public health emergency preparedness coordinator, Jonathan Butler, was paying very close attention and was helping us to hear what was going on. And we started to hear stories of people being very ill there, 20% of the people either being hospitalized or needing oxygen, and this was starting to get a little scary. At Christmas that year, I remember telling my family, something's going on. We don't really know what's happening, but our antennae are up, and it sounds like it's causing problems. And I remember that there was some thoughts about, well, maybe the Chinese population is having some of these issues because there's a high rate of smoking, maybe they've got lung issues. And then we were thinking, gosh, we have a lot of chronic diseases in our country. How is this? How are we gonna do here? And it was terrifying. Pretty quickly, in February, we kept hearing things, and so our director of health, Charles Brown, who some of you may know, we decided we all needed to meet with our towns, with the town leadership. And I still remember Charlie saying, it's time to start dusting off your continuity of operation plans. Something might be coming along. It was starting to become inevitable at that time. So that was kind of the beginning of this ever-rolling, unfolding stream of activities that began with us keeping on following the news, having regular meetings with the State Department of Public Health, trying to find out what was going on with testing. That became a problem. Then we started to find out there was testing, so we would share with people, where is the testing going on? We started to get PPE, so we started to get the PPE together and then distribute it out to places that need it. We would have distributions in the summer of before the vaccine came out, getting it out to people that were working with elderly people. Some hospitals ran out of things, so we would get this PPE and get it out wherever it needed to go. That continued then into kind of overlapping with that was we started to have people coming in from China, and so we needed to follow, and that began the beginnings of contact tracing and trying to help people understand the little that we knew at the time, what we were gonna do. We then had an amazing thing happen, and one of those people is sitting right in this room. We needed to have contact tracers because we needed to reach out to people who were positive and share with them the information that we knew at the time. We had an incredible group of people, including someone right here in this front row, who we met with them every day and they would contact people and share with them the information that we knew at the time. Those everyday meetings kept going for almost 2+ years. Then we finally got a vaccine. So the vaccine, that was a relatively short period of time for the development of a vaccine, which was, from our standpoint, an amazing thing that there was something to give to people, because masks, hand sanitizer, and telling people to stay apart from one another was really unsatisfying and harmful. And we knew that there was those issues. So that was sort of a continual roll-up. We had 38 vaccination clinics, including the booster clinics. Tina will recall, we were here. We were out there as public health workers, you know, having our masks on, just out there helping people to get the vaccines if they wanted them. We were there to offer them to people. We tried to focus on folks with access and functional needs mostly, just to make sure that people here at the senior center, people who needed extra time, people who were extremely stressed and needed to have more of a one-on-one, that's what we focused on and what we tried to do. We didn't, although we planned for it, you never know exactly what the calamity is going to be. As a public health worker, we had H1N1. So we saw a mini version of this, but I don't know that we were prepared for the extent of the deaths and the horrors that our next guest will be talking about with hospitals faced. And so this was more of a personal part. I felt like my personal life and professional life were really meshed at this time. And even though things were imperfect and it was terribly difficult, and we knew people were really sick, maybe stayed sick, maybe still are sick, I felt like we had a sense of mission and a way that we could contribute just through those little steps. And that was very satisfying, even though there was controversy, and I know lots of people disagreed with some of the regulations and guidance that came. But as a person in public health, it felt like we were able to do something to help. And once those vaccinations came, we did start to see the death rates drop, which was very satisfying to see that happen. I would like to reiterate some of the positives that I saw in public health. We have been seeing the links between mental health and physical health, and I think this pandemic put a spotlight on that in a negative way, but also it's much easier now, I think, and it's more acceptable to talk about mental health issues, and I'm thankful that that came. I also feel like the response in our communities and the support from our teammates like Tina, it showed me what great communities these 4 communities that we're lucky to work in are. So the teamwork of everybody was great, and some of that has happened. And our volunteers who worked tirelessly, even on the weekends, making calls to help answer people's questions. One thing that changed during that time period, our contact tracers would get overwhelmed trying to call and having lots of people get questions. So we had we called it our 216 line. And we had our contact tracers refer people to our health educator or call that 216 line. So people that needed extra time having things explained to them, needed masks, needed gowns for some reason, needed gloves. We figured out how to get those things to them and the people that needed extra time. And that line is still open. We still use it now for our flu clinics, and it's a really nice way to work with our public and have people call if they need things. So that's been a benefit. I also like to say our drive-through flu clinics were something that came up during that time because we needed to figure out how to get people their flu shots. And so we did them outside. We had tents blowing away. We had people that couldn't drive very well. They had some of their own challenges. But that is something that we have kept. We have at least one drive-through clinic because there was a lot of people that liked it, and some people who are maybe for a variety of reasons don't want to come in to a clinic. So that's a lasting thing, along with our teammates that we enjoy working with.
Sure, again? You don't want to say more? Because you could say a lot more. As you can see, I'm Nancy DuPont. I'm the Director of Epidemiology, Infection Prevention Control at John Dempsey Hospital, UConn Health. And I oversee dialysis and also inpatient, outpatient wound care. As you can see, I'm not as well prepared because I don't have a typed paper in front of me. So I'm just going to speak pretty much from my heart. Some of the unique challenges we had were pretty incredible. Everything became virtual. Our meetings became virtual. We had an hour meeting every morning going through the list of what needed to be looked at. When the vaccinations came out, we also had drive-through vaccinations and also testing. We tested outside and set it up in the parking garage, which was a unique challenge within itself. Tracking of the vaccination, we did not have a digital tracking system keeping track of all the employees who received their vaccine, and now we had to because it was mandatory vaccination. So that was developed during COVID. One of the other challenges is that we really partnered with stores and all the students at UConn. So we were making decisions with the schools for our medical dental school, the universities, and the hospital. It was a lot of time that was spent. So you can only imagine the time that wasn't spent on our regular activities. One of the things that I did want to talk about is the staff, the difficulty wearing the PPE. If you can only imagine, personal protective equipment, if you can only imagine how hot it gets with all that gear on and with the labor-intensive work that happened during that time, we were doing things that when I worked in the ICU, we never did. There were patients who were on ventilators and required to be placed on their stomachs. It took 4 people to do that, and that's a lot of work. A lot of the outpatient clinics were closed initially, and so all of those people who worked in the outpatient clinic and were used to that came up to the hospital to work and help out. And so that was, can you imagine being displaced in your routine job like that? And also some of the barriers were when we were reopening, how we were gonna do that, how we were gonna screen all the plexiglass. Someone else had mentioned before, it was everywhere. People were afraid and they were very, very just, I don't want to say not trusting, but in my position, when you have to tell somebody one day that this is what we're doing, this is how we're going to handle this, and then in 2 days, the recommendations that come out federally are different, and then you go back to them and say, well, we're going to do it this way now. It becomes extraordinarily confusing, and it really, really sets up some tension of trust. And that's very difficult for an infection prevention department because our lives are based on our staff and visitors trusting us. So that was very, very difficult. I will tell you, and I mean, I can feel my jaws clenching as everybody was talking. Probably one of the most difficult things that I had to deal with was the fact that we were running out of protective gear, and we have a lot. We have warehouses full of things, and we were starting to run out. We were starting to run out, or in danger of running out, of our N95 respirators, which are higher level protection against airborne contamination. What were we gonna do? In my wildest dreams of 27 years of infection control, I would have never in my life guessed that we would promote reuse of masks after they were sanitized but by an outside company. The thought of putting an employee potentially in harm's way because they were reusing a mask, it was enough to make you just feel scared to death. I don't even know what else to say. Never mind tracking the masks to make sure the people who gave us the masks got their masks back. We had to sort them by our hands ourselves and distribute them back to the employees. And it was a very difficult thing to tell somebody, when you're taking care of COVID positive patients, you can wear that mask into each patient's room and continue to wear that mask. And then you put it in a bag and save it until you need it again. And then at the end of the day, you submit it to infection prevention so we could ship it off, get it cleaned. It was very, very scary, and I still don't like to think about that at all. But I am very happy to say that we never had transmission from a patient to an employee or employee to a patient. Employee to employee, yes, because sometimes people decided to go out to dinner together, et cetera. That was also a very big challenge. I don't want to go over my time. I just want to be very respectful. So the visiting hours. Can you imagine telling someone they can't visit their sick relative? It was very difficult. And of course, we had compassionate reasons and allowed it. There was a mom, a high-risk mom, and she had 5 children, and her husband, their family lived more than an hour away from the hospital. She had to be admitted to the hospital because she was so high risk with her 6th birth, her 6th pregnancy, and her children were all little. How did they understand they couldn't see their mom? So we worked. And what we did was we had them come up, we positioned the mom near a window, we had the 5 children come up, and they waved in the parking lot to their mom. That was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. There were quite a bit of challenges, and I think that we obviously have learned a tremendous amount of what we needed to do, et cetera. However, there's always more work to be done, and also every illness is different. You might have to change things according to the way the illness is transmitted. So I think that we learned about our preparedness through the reality of it, and I think that was a positive thing. What shifts or changes have remained? Some rare, but some people still work from home. You know, I went to work every day. One of the changes during that time was that my ride was straight into work. It wasn't filled with traffic. What's back to normal is the traffic. And so people are still working remote. We have our visitors' policies are back to normal. We're not wearing masks right now universally in the hospital. The N95 respirators are, we say, one and done. You wear it, take it off, discard it. That's a huge relief. How do I explain any changes that we have seen? Fear. A lot of the changes have been through fear, science, learning about the science, and a strength. People dug deep for the strength to come to work. And some of the positive things are those that we saw that we can manage this, no matter how difficult it was. Some of the sadness or negative is that a lot of staff were burnt out absolutely burnt out. The new nurses and new physicians, it was very difficult for them. It was really hard to come into the health field and be exposed to that. And I think that, you know, it feels good to be back where we are, but I don't think we'll ever be fully relaxed about things. And we make sure we monitor and audit things very well. I could talk all night about my experience, so I'm going to stop there and turn it over.
Oh, wow. Well, my name's David Bajoni. I am the EMS chief for the Town of Berlin Fire Department. I'm also a retired paramedic of 27 years. I retired finally in October of 24. So I was working as a line paramedic all through COVID. And I became the EMS chief on January 18th, 2020. 2 days later, I got a phone call from Jim Simons saying, the health district has this Zoom meeting going on about this thing. You need to hop on this. So I logged in, and after that, pretty much the operational world that I knew got turned upside down and inside out. Every issue that both these ladies had talked about, PPE, the logistics of how we're gonna run things, instantly became a very focused problem for me as a leader. I have a staff that's all volunteers. These guys, all of a sudden, their complete support systems were gone. They had no daycare, they had no school to send kids to, they had to figure out what to do with elderly parents, and now I'm wondering, how am I gonna get enough guys on the truck to go to a fire? Then I gotta worry about how am I taking the guys that are on the truck and protecting them when I'm sending them out to fires. I had people calling me, and my wife was sitting in the audience, she'll tell you that my phone would ring off the hook some days with guys saying, how do we handle this? What's the next step? What can we wear? How do we protect ourselves? I had people going to simple calls wearing full SCBA because we had nothing else. You talked about UConn almost running out of PPE. We ran out. Being a small department, I couldn't place a big enough PPE order to take priority. So we ended up becoming kind of inventive. We ended up going through our SCBA distributor, and we purchased what we call T filters, which hook into our SCBA masks with P100 filters. They're not N95s, but they're extremely close, they're equivalent. And that's what we were using if we had to go and come in contact with a person needing medical attention. Berlin Fire does not do medicals. We do medicals in technical rescues, car accidents, if we remove victims from fires, and we still had to deal with all that. We got a little bit of a break when they closed the world down. People stopped driving, sort of, and the people that were driving still kept crashing into things. We were dealing with a lot of, some of those crashes where these people were going to get tested and they got sick. We had probably, I'd like to say, at least half a dozen where these people were like, oh, I'm COVID positive, and I just plowed into a bridge abutment on Route 9, and my guys were like, oh, wait a minute. But they went and they suited up, and they still went and did the job. The stuff that I had to come up with was plans that we didn't have. We never had a plan for isolating members and taking care of them. If I got a guy who got exposed, he didn't want to go home, so where do I put him? I was very lucky that one of the biggest changes that happened was all the relationships that we were able to cultivate. We were able to come up with a plan and talk to hotels. We were able to get hotel rooms. And I had a couple of people who's, yeah, I got COVID, can I go somewhere? We were able to put them up long enough that they could stay away from their families. Some of the stuff that we saw for training, all of our training was gone. There's no distance learning for being a fireman. You can't pull hose on Zoom. You can't use the jaws on Zoom. So all of our training went to online platforms, and a lot of our guys were concerned that they were going to lose that ability to physically do it because they're not manipulating the equipment. We actually shuttered firehouses for about 4 months. You came down, you did the call, and within 10 minutes we were out the door. We came up with full decon procedures and equipment. We actually built decon sprayers for our apparatus. At the end of a call, we'd come back, we'd load decon solution into these sprayers, and we'd spray the back of the trucks out. And that's what we had to do. From the EMS perspective, I will say that personally, the mental health, it took a big toll on me being in the field. We were taking patients that they had lost ability to go to their doctor for their regular issues, and now I'm seeing sicker patients, more critical patients. Patients didn't want to go to the hospital. They were scared to go. And they were waiting until they were so sick that I'm looking at this person, and now I've got a family looking at me going, you need to help my dad. And I'm like, looking at this patient going, in every bit of clinical judgment I got is going, this patient's not going to make it to the ER. I'm still trying to work. You're talking about working in PPE. We're working in Tyvek suits. At one point, I remember one day, and that was probably towards the end of me being on an ambulance full-time, was that when we had that flare-up in the spring of 22. One of those shifts, in a 16-hour shift, I worked 9 cardiac arrests, and not one of them survived. I was in a Tyvek suit for 21 hours. By the time I came home, I actually stripped down, and that was it. My partner and I were worked our shift in gym shorts. We had gotten so hot, we literally just took off uniforms. We were wearing gym shorts under everything. So one of the things that came from that was a big awareness of mental health, big awareness of how that takes a toll on stuff. I became very aware of what these kind of situations do for my members. As a result, we've become very proactive with like critical incident stress management. We've unfortunately had to use it many times, but we've got a great team that now within the state that runs to help us. The relationships that we were able to forge with hospitals, with health districts, they've become really beneficial to EMS. Some of the changes that I saw, a lot of the distance education, we found that it was not all that it cracked up to be for our industry. We had a group of what we called the COVID EMTs. I can remember one of my best friends, he was my partner, and Chris had a couple EMTs come through. They went through their full class without ever touching a patient. I was blown away. I'm like, how do you get your EMT certification without ever touching somebody? So now, in addition, we have this person that we're trying to teach who has the knowledge, but that never actually touched a live human. Some of the younger members I've seen come in that have come in when they were younger during COVID, they have the kind of almost a disconnect with that. They don't like to touch people. So trying to get them over that hurdle as a practicing EMT. As far as the town's plan, we had to come up with a lot of it. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would have DPH calling me and saying, hey, you wrote a COVID plan, can we copy it and send it out? And I was, sure, go ahead. My COVID plan had fit for duty surveys. My members would send in a survey every Sunday night, tell me how they're doing, how their family's doing. We had infrastructure set up to help families out. We had people bringing groceries to some members who their parents couldn't get out. No problem, we'll get somebody over there to get something for them. So it really took everything that we had and everything that I'm used to operating. And I was a supervisor prior, but everything that I had was based on the ability to turn to somebody. And now I'm turning and there was nothing there. So we had to come up with everything from the beginning. Now, hopefully, those plans will stay in the book, and they'll stay in the book put away. But it's a good thing to see that they're there. You know, it's good to see that we were able to rise to this and still conquer it. But next time I'd like to not do it.
Thank you. Wow, I can't thank you all enough. This was just amazing, and I so appreciate your sharing your experiences with us, because I just think it's one of the most impactful programs that we've ever had in the library, so I thank you. A lot of things that people brought up, I think, oh yeah, I remember that. I kind of had forgotten about that. And just brought up a lot. So I wanted to turn over to the audience now to see if anybody has any questions or any comments to any of the presenters. Yes.
My husband and I were totally shocked last month when we got COVID for the first time.
Wow.
We thought it was overdone. I tried to find a 1-800 line to call about COVID. It doesn't exist anymore. They stopped. And, you know, my husband looked online to try to find, you know, the newest things, what was happening. Supposedly 2025, the COVID will last 5 days, and then you wear a mask for 5 days. That's not the case for us. We were, you know, very sick for a good 7 days at least, and not being able to talk to somebody. Now you're from the health department. Do you still take calls from people?
You could absolutely call.
Yeah.
And
For some reason, I didn't even think because of that. And then my husband ended up having rebound COVID, which I had never heard of. So that set us back for a while, but it's just, you know, also scary. And I should have thought to call the health department.
But I think
just
you
to have
remind
a
us,
human to
the
talk to.
pathogen is still out there. You know, we
Yes.
talk about COVID's over, and it's not. That is still out there. People are still getting sick. It is still, it's killing less people, but it's still around.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry that you've been dealing with that, and I have to say, thank you for wearing a mask.
Mine is twofold, allergies and COVID.
And COVID.
But I want to thank all of you as well.
Yeah, I'd just like to especially thank the Stop and Shop people because you were such heroes for the meeting. Yes. People that couldn't find what they wanted, so thank you especially. And not involved in the school system or a senior, and the public health people, and you're probably one of the, you called me at one point, and my husband was the second person to be taken into John Dempsey Hospital with COVID. Wow. In mid-late March. And when I took him to the emergency room, there were 2 or 3 people behind the desk. There was not a soul in the emergency room. Wow. And he spent 8 days there and was fine. But what a trauma that was. So thank you. And fortunately, we didn't need the EMT to make you put on all that, but I can't imagine what that was like. Thank you.
I'm just wondering, what's the current vaccine status? Like, are we shooting it once a year? What's going on?
There is, they were saying twice because it's mutating. The virus is still mutating. So the thought is that there's going to be 2 different vaccines. Like we are preparing right now for our fall flu clinics in which we will be offering a COVID vaccine will be in conjunction at the flu clinics for people who want one. So they're still doing that. We don't offer them twice a year, but like CVS and that has it. So that is, you know, vaccines are not recommended. Are hospital staff having to have a vaccine? What are they doing?
Yeah.
It's not mandatory anymore. So it's people's choice. But yes, we will have them available. And far fewer people are taking them. But there are a number of people, especially among our older folks, who are looking for the vaccine.
Any other questions? Yes, Albina?
Similar to what she said, I called a friend of mine and I said, you sound terrible. My husband's got COVID. I said, oh. And I'm getting COVID because they told me close proximity, and she did. But she has never had any shots because she feels she's never had any preventive shots for COVID because of the deleterious possibilities of things that can happen. What could happen if you have a reaction to COVID? The shot, right, not the COVID, but the shot.
I think different people can have different reactions to the COVID shot. There's not one thing. I mean, a lot of people, the extent of it was a sore arm. Some people didn't get a sore arm. Some people would feel kind of icky the next day. And And then there's people, if they were allergic to something in the vaccine, then people could get more sick. There was some, looking back, that there was for younger males, there was some cardiopathy that they were, for a very small percentage of males had that. That was an experience. And some people just have bad reactions for reasons that I don't know that would ever be figured out. So, your friend had her reasons for not wanting to get vaccinated. And, it'd be hard to tell what her situation was.
Does anybody else have any questions? Yes.
I can just make a comment. I think that this was an amazing program. So I'm usually loud enough, am I not? So my husband is Dave, and so I was experiencing COVID through his eyes and all the things that he was dealing with. But I'm also a mom who had kids in school, who had a stepdaughter who was graduating in 2020. I'm a nurse educator at Hartford Hospital, so I was experiencing everything that Nancy was talking about. So I was experiencing all this simultaneously, and so having to think about it, I think this was so important, and so important for more towns and more places to do. I want to go back to my hospital and say we need to do this, because I think it's good to talk about it. And this was very nice. I'm glad that you did it. Thank you.
Don't you feel exhausted now, though?
Yeah.
So to be honest, I think that the more exhausting part is the afterwards. A lot of people talked about the teamwork that happened. So in the moment, all the nurses came together. We were there. We were a team. We just got it done. That's what nurses do, and we adapt. It's the afterwards when the nurses were burnt out and now we're leaving and now the staffing, all of that afterwards stuff. But I think when you mentioned the empty emergency room, I think that was the day that I was the most scared, when the census of the hospital went to a level that I would never imagine it ever being. That was the scariest part, even more so than all of the patients that were coming in. So yeah, it's tiring, but it's the after effects that you have to think about, the nurses that we're training that were, 2020 graduates of, high school that lost a lot of connection and the ability to speak to people. Everything's via text and via Zoom and Teams, and they can't have conversations, with providers and stuff. So there's just a whole new, different way we have to meet their needs. So, yeah. So thank you to all of you. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. I just wondered if any of you can talk about maybe if you found a way to decompress or relax during this time that worked for you, or that was unique in any way.
I had a phone 24/7, so I did not have anything. I did not.
Yeah.
And it rang. It rang.
And what about, I think, Kelly, you mentioned about the parade of teachers in town. Yes. And I remember that in my neighborhood. I was out for a walk and saw that parade, and it just made me tear up, and the kids standing in their driveways. It was just wonderful. And I'm trying to think, was there other things that happened that were just heartwarming and that you saw during this time that might that come to mind at all besides that?
I can say that there were many people in the community that actually sewed masks and brought them in and donated different things. They became very creative. They made headbands with buttons so that would hold the masks on, and many businesses sent food for the nurses and doctors, which was very, very, very kind.
And what about Vincenzo? Can you tell us about graduation?
Yeah, so I guess technically we graduated twice. June something, we had a car parade, started at Sage Park, went to McGee, through Willard, back to Berlin High. didn't get our diploma till August, where we graduated and they set up a stage right in front of the tennis courts. And we sat 6 feet apart. Our parents sat in the car in the second half of the parking lot, tuned into the school radio, and that's how they heard us graduate. Yeah, we walked up. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, you'll have a story forever, right? Actually, you all will. Tina, do you still do weekly robocalls? Yes. Okay.
Yes, I do. You know, because I was going to stop them. I think it was maybe 2 years out, you know, maybe like 2022 or maybe 2023. And folks said, no, don't stop them. We love your robocall. So every Friday, before I go home, 4 o'clock, I make my robocall. And you know, some people say, oh, I have dinner to your call, and you know, and I just update them about, you know, not just what's going on at the senior center, but what's going on in the community. And I always end with an inspirational quote about kindness and gratitude, and they look forward to it. And the same thing with the birthday cards. We started that during the pandemic to stay connected, to let people know, even though we're not together, we're still here for you. You know, you're not alone. And we were gonna stop because of the cost of postage, but a kind group in town donated the money for the postage, and people give us the cards for free. So we pretty much send out 120 cards every month for birthdays. And it is heartwarming because some people, you know, they write us thank you notes for their birthday cards, or they call and they're in tears saying, you're the only card I got. So it's a little thing, but it's a big thing, you know, and it's a way to stay connected to the folks. So yeah, we did a car parade during the pandemic for Viola Sadin. She turned 100, and I cannot tell you, the community turned out. We had so many cars. We were like down by St. Paul's Church. We were wrapped around on Peck Street, Allen Street. I think we had Channel 3 or Channel 30 showed up. We decorated her lawn. There was a proclamation written for her. And the funny thing is that I grew up in the neighborhood where she lived. She knew me as a baby. She had told me, I babysat for you once, you know. So it really was touching, and she was really thankful for that. And we've continued with the car parades. When some of our folks turn 100, I organize a car parade, and we get a proclamation. We decorate their lawns. You know, whatever they request, but we celebrate. We celebrate life. So.
I just wanted to add something to Tina.
Yes.
The robocalls, I think I can't even emotionally tell you, you know, how important they were.
Yeah.
And especially for people who lived alone.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and it's also, you know, a lot of people are new. They move into town, and they're not familiar with like what is going on. That's why I'm going to plug our program, Carrie. So we're doing a community outreach program. We're doing one during the day at the senior center, and we're doing one here at the library. And it is different department heads that are going to come, and they're going to let people know what services we offer as a town, what programs we offer as a town, because a lot of people don't know. So we're going to share that to let people know. So look forward to that. That's May. Ours is, I know, ours at, okay, theirs is the beginning of June. Ours at the senior center is May 14th. So if you're 1 o'clock, or you can come to the library one. But it's going to be, you know, the town manager, senior center, park and rec, social services, the library, Berlin Police Department. Haven't heard back from fire, Jim Simons, and I'm trying to think who else is coming. And I was going to invite, if you would like, Ann, from the health district, because a lot of people don't realize that your health district covers Berlin and what
We're
you have to
trying
offer.
to get the word out.
So, yeah, it's getting the word out, letting people know what we have in this great town of ours.
What made you guys think to do this? Like, and make us all revisit our collective trauma. Right? That it's a little healing, but I'm just, but just
I
interested.
think we were just having a conversation one day, back maybe in the beginning of the year, maybe not even that long ago, and just thinking, well, because, the media started talking about 5 years, it's been 5 years, and, we were all kind of talking about the things that have changed for us here at the library.
And I think too, as librarians, we also have an eye on keeping history. And so to take this moment to really look back and record it and preserve it, that's something that we think about a lot. So I think that was part of the impetus too.
Well, great idea.
Yeah.
How did you keep running?
How did we keep running? Yeah, so we actually were lucky enough that the town did let us work from home for the first month and a half, I would say. And I remember my neighbor saying to me, well, what would the library need to work from home? Like, why do you guys need to work? We actually took calls from people. We had the phones transferred. It was a huge deal. We had our phones transferred to our numbers, and we would be answering calls, and people would need to figure out resources, so we would connect them, let them know about different resources that they had. I remember being in my basement taking calls. It was just a crazy time. And then we did the plexiglass was everywhere. We did do one vaccine clinic here where people were lined up. One, maybe two. Maybe we did two. We distributed masks once they became more readily available. I don't know if it was your department or I don't know. Somebody would bring over boxes of masks, and we would be able to distribute them to the public. And when the people first started to make appointments for vaccines, so many I remember, Tina, we would have phone calls about this because so many people, elderly people, didn't have computers at home or had no idea how to navigate because those were not real easy at first to make those appointments. Oh, especially those CVS ones, those were hard to. So we would be constantly helping people make those go through the online process to make those appointments. There were days we were exhausted after doing that because it was just people who just didn't even, a lot of people didn't know how to use a mouse, trying to help them do this, but we didn't, we're not really supposed to put their personal information in for them. So not as traumatic as anybody here, but.
We did a Saturday where volunteers from town helped me, and we took our registry that we have, and we called all our senior members to say, do you need a COVID shot? Because we were scheduling for the health district. Because how many days did we do, Ann? We did I don't know how many, and that's how we made
Probably
sure
10.
that everybody knew that there was COVID shots at the senior center. We'll register you right now or whatever, and that was. We did many days doing COVID shots at the senior center, but it was successful.
About to say, when you're talking about administering like vaccine programs, that became part of my job at the fire department. I honestly expected my members to be like, nope, I'm all good. I sent out the email for the vaccines being available. We had to enter at the time when they first came out, before they were released to general public. EMS, fire, PD, health, hospital, we all got first shots at it. We had to manually enter our people's information to this fun thing called VAM, the Vaccine Administration System. So I expected guys to be like, no, I'm good. My phone probably blew right off my desk. 98% of my members wanted the vaccine, so I spent probably 2 days entering their information, but I can relate to trying to find people's sites for testing. That was navigating that CVS portal. That was a lot of fun. I probably sent 70 or 80 people out for testing from exposures. So trying to navigate that was a definite challenge, especially for someone who I literally was dropped into it 2 days in, and we had to come up with it. Because I remember, I think I was calling it was either John Dempsey or New Britain. I had to call and get their ID on the phone to help me run through the portal a couple times. And then the health district too. I called you guys a bunch of times.
We're there for. I think a few more things I remember from the libraries. A lot of our patrons are older and rely on the library as a social place. So there was a period of time where we were closed. Even when we came back into the building, you know, people were allowed to come in like one at a time for a while. So they lost a lot of that social interaction. But we did put puzzles outside that they could just take. We put old books that we were getting rid of. We put those out there so they could come and grab those. That was, I guess, during the lockdown. Is there any other memories that you have during that time?
Yeah, so one of the programs that I run here at the library is a monthly craft program. And so, and that is really a social gathering because people, if you're involved in crafts, you know that it's not just about what you're doing, it's about who you're doing it with and who you get to know. And so, of course, when we finally came back into the building after working at home and doing more webinars than I could possibly imagine I would ever do, we started making kits so that people could still have that experience. And we tried a lot of different things. I did some online things. Not that wonderful. I discovered that when you try to do a craft with people online, mostly people just are quiet. And then I had to be the one to fill in all the dead space. And that's not really my comfort zone. But we did those craft kits for quite a long time. Yes. And we had an amazing volunteer that once we got opened up a little bit more, but we weren't doing programming. We had this wonderful volunteer. She had retired from nursing, and she came in faithfully, and she did those kits for us. And she was just one of the brightest spots. When she would come in, she said, you know, I'm retired, but like I went from like 80-hour weeks to 0-hour weeks. And she said, I love coming in here because you give me an excuse to put on earrings. And she was a bright spot for me. So that was one of my memories.
Yeah. Do you have any questions for Lisa?
So I actually want to go back to Carrie's earlier question, just as a way of sort of wrapping things up here tonight, about a heartwarming experience or a hopeful experience. And this question would be for anyone on the panel who would like to answer. So please just chime in as you like.
One quick experience that we had a drive-by birthday party for one of the students. And we reached out. This person was really loved Bob Maxon. So we reached out to Bob Maxon, and he showed up for the drive-by. It was pretty cool.
I don't have a heartwarming one, but I was delivering masks. I think I delivered, I don't know how many masks across town, besides the toilet paper, paper towels, Lysol wipes. And I was at a woman's house, and I heard the noise of wild turkeys. And I said, okay, I gotta go, because I could see them coming around the house. And she goes, no, I got some books and puzzles for you. I'm going, okay, you gotta hurry, because I don't want to be chased by. And it was like 10 turkeys, wild turkeys. And I just ran to my car, got in, and yeah, that was my scary moment in delivering masks, was being chased by wild turkeys. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have one. So when we were doing the flu clinics, we were the vaccine clinics for COVID, we were very aware that some people were very nervous. They wanted to get one, but they were nervous about getting one. Maybe they were nervous about vaccines anyway. And there was one gentleman who was anxiety-ridden, and he came, and he has had a fainting problem sometimes with vaccines. And so he came with a blanket to lie down. And our nurses were it was just so beautiful. We have the screens to protect people, got a screen for him so he could just not faint and be at peace, and whatever issues he had could be dealt with. He came back for his booster shots, we knew him, we knew what he needed, and we actually saw him. We did some work at our clinic. We have a clinic now in Rocky Hill, and he came, and I felt like it was us being maybe more receptive than we would. I hope that we would have been, but just to the special needs of people. And he rested at the clinic after his vaccine for as much time as he needed, and everybody was fine with it. It's just what he needed. And so just, I feel like we're a little more sensitive to all of those needs that people have. And we're glad for that. It's changed some of the ways that we do things.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just had to just figure things out and just make it work, and
Yeah.
that was just how it had to be.
Yep.
Well, thank you all so much for coming tonight. I
Thank you
really
for
appreciate it.